In this video, we're going to learn how to use a pivot table to calculate the total trip distance for people observed in the Montreal Origin Destination Survey domiciled in municipal sectors 106 and 440. The previous video described the Origin Destination Survey and how it was structured, so if you need some more information about that, then you should look at that video. So what we're going to do now is use a pivot table to calculate the total trip distance for all those people observed in the OD survey who live in the municipal sectors 106 and 440. First thing we have to do, well, we have to be in our table that we're interested in using to calculate our information. And if you'll remember, each line represents an observation or a trip for an individual person. And the last variable that we have here is ddist, and that is the distance in meters for that particular trip as the crow flies. So we're going to use a pivot table. How do we use a pivot table? We have to go to Insert, Insert Pivot Table, and the Excel will automatically choose a worksheet or a data set. We can see that it begins with cell A1, column A, row 1, and goes all the way to column AI, 13,570. So that's correct. Sometimes it's possible for Excel to make mistakes and not do a good job of figuring out where your data is, so it's very important that you know the size of your data before going into the pivot table, but this is the correct size, all the way from A1 to AI, 13,570. We're going to allow it to go into a new worksheet, because that's easier. And then what I normally do too is I change the name of the sheet, because it'll make it easier to navigate afterwards. We call this pivot table. Alright, now in the pivot table, the first thing we want to do is figure out what is the variable that we're interested in calculating. It happens to be the distance. So I put the distance in here. This by default gives me the sum of ddist. So this is the sum of the distance for all of the trips recorded for people domiciled in municipal sectors 106 and 440. Now what we'd like to do is break down this information for people who are resided in municipal sector 106 and 440. So we are going to find the variable, which is M, referring to the ménage, the household, and the domicile municipal sector, dom-sm. We put that into row labels, and now we can see that we have two rows, one representing the municipal sector 106 and the other one representing the municipal sector 404. And this number here is the sum of the total distance of all the trips made by people in our sample residing in municipal sector 106, and this one here too, 404. Now, what we'd also, that's right. What would be good would be just to include people who actually make trips, households that make trips. It won't obviously affect anything, but it's often useful to remove those people all the same. So we are going to remove anybody who hasn't made a trip. We put this variable. This is if there's an observation but the person didn't make a trip, it will be a 0. If there's an observation and the people did make a trip, it will be a 1. So we use that information and we click on 1, and here we go. Because this is the sum of the distances, naturally this won't affect the total distance, but it's good to know about this feature where you can use a filter to remove subsets of your sample. Okay, so that's everything for how to use a pivot table, or how you might want to use a pivot table, and it will help you to do your assignment.